Sweet. Well, we are rocking and rolling on another edition of Buffalo Roamer Outdoors. Nate, excited to talk with you, man. I do not know much about you, but sounds like we share some similar passions. So, looking forward to chatting and breaking it down, man. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you, and thank you so much for the invite. I'm stoked to chat with you too.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I found your social media. I forget how exactly I found it, but I've been following your Instagram for a while, and you got some awesome stuff on the Instagram. And then I saw you do a review of Fishell Paddle, which is a sponsor of this podcast. And I was like, oh, nice. And then I kind of started looking at it more. And I was like, dude, this dude loves to canoe as well. Got to get him on.
I sure do, and yeah, I've been enjoying that paddle a lot. Actually, I'm going to do another sort of like a little bit more of an in-depth review and some history there shortly, just with Kettlewell and Fishell, and sort of lay out the differences between the two. Now that I have two hand in hand to compare, so that'll be coming soon.
Sweet, man. Yeah. And I wasn't that familiar with like the story and the heritage behind it with the Kettlewell versus the Fishell. But so you have a Kettlewell too. Break that down a little bit for me.
Oh man, it was one of those crazy things that I know for some people, maybe they've had a few in their home that they got years and years ago, and maybe they still use them. But for me, a kettlewell paddle was sort of like one of those rare, hard to find paddles, of course, because Ray hasn't been making them for quite a long time, at least for sort of general consumption for the public. And so it just so happened, like I always have alerts set on Facebook Marketplace for canoes and paddles and stuff. And this really funny ad came up that was like, this guy was like selling a set of oars and like I think a kayak paddle, and he had this like canoe paddle, and he was just like selling paddles, and you couldn't really see the entire canoe paddle unless you actually clicked on the photo. And I clicked on the photo, and there was this like kettlewell paddle. Now, when you clicked on the photo, you could see the logo, and I was like, okay. So I messaged the guy, and he's like, yeah, just come over, see me, $40, it's all yours.
Wow.
So I went over there like the next day. Guy was really nice, and he had a pretty cool story behind it. And yeah, I let him know that this is what he had, but he was still more than happy to part with it for the price he did, and happy to see it go to a good home. And that was a pretty cool day for me, because the background of it was that he and his wife had looked after a cottage for one of Ray's sort of first big customers. And the proprietors of the cottage gave them these paddles and stuff, and this kettlewell was one of them. And now they're just past that and needed to sell it off. So yeah, it was pretty
That's
cool to
awesome,
get my
man.
hands on that. And then I actually I used it like 2 days later, like right away. I wanted to get it in the water, and yeah, it felt real nice, just like it should. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I love it. I love the Fishell paddles, man. And the shape, I was looking for something with that particular shape, and there's not that many people that have shapes similar to that, and like that thinner blade. And yeah, I found Greg Fishell and hit him up, and I ended up meeting him at Canoecopia. Oh, I don't know, this last March. And yeah, we became friends, and he makes awesome paddles, man. That's for sure. I love like the feel of the skinny shaft because
Yeah.
you still get the same surface area, but just less wear
Yeah.
and tear. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a well balanced paddle, and like I said, I've been using the one Greg gave me since last fall, and I've been using it every time I've gone out, and I'm still like, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm making sure that I can do like a good review based on a lot of usage, and I'm pretty stoked on it, especially because I've been able to use both now, of course. So yeah,
Nice, man. That's
pretty
cool. Well,
pretty sweet paddles if you can get your hands on either one of them.
totally.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And if you're listening and you want one, if you use the code WILL at checkout, you get yourself a free paddle hanger with that paddle. So there you go. Artwork for the
There we go.
wall. So we dove right in, but give me a little bit of bit of background about who you are. I know you have the YouTube, you got some YouTube videos. Obviously, you love to paddle and are a canoeer, but give me a little bit of a background about your story and who you are, and kind of tied into the outdoors and canoeing, I guess.
Well, lucky for me, my parents moved up to Muskoka when I was very young. Muskoka, if you're not sure where that is, it's about 2.5 to 3 hours north of Toronto, and it's considered sort of cottage country for the province of Ontario, or sort of more classic cottage country for the province of Ontario. and Yeah, it's beautiful. It's there's lakes everywhere. It's home to a bunch of different provincial parks, which is sort of the equivalent of like a national park that you would have down there. And yeah, it's heavily wooded. There's abundant wildlife, or there still is abundant wildlife in some areas. But yeah, there's lakes everywhere. You can, depending on where you are, you can throw a rock and hit a lake. So I was really fortunate that my parents wanted to raise me in the outdoors like that, and we were involved in a camp that still operates today near Bala, which is near sort of it's kind of a little niche community in cottage country here, and has a long history of cottaging, being on the water, and kids camps, and they were quite involved with that. So I grew up going to a camp that there was a lot of canoeing involved in the day-to-day activities there, and that's just kind of how I was really fortunate enough to grow up. And then after a bit of a hiatus through my teenage years and most of my 20s, when I was doing a lot of skateboarding and snowboarding and photography, I kind of took a break from the outdoors and the way I was brought up a little bit. And then in the last 10 years or so, I've kind of gotten right back into it. And I'm sure you may or may not know, but you can't skateboard or snowboard at the same level you did in your 20s as you can in your 40s. Unfortunately, your body just doesn't usually put up with that. And so I was needing sort of a different, like, creative outlet, and of course, getting back into canoeing and camping in the outdoors sort of just felt like coming home for me, and that's where I sort of I dove right back into it and became heavily involved in it through my job, and also through just the way I spent my free time. So
That's awesome, man. I love it. Yeah, it sounds like a beautiful place to be. I've always, you always hear of. I have to admit, I have not heard of Muskoka before. I have heard of Algonquin. Of course, I hear you hear of Algonquin all the time in canoeing culture, but it sounds like an amazing place to grow up and to be now.
yeah, so what's interesting is that Algonquin is just sort of at the northern tip of what you would consider Muskoka. So it's not all like these wild lakes surrounded by woods. There's some very heavily populated lakes that have, multi-million-dollar cottages, and $200,000 wakeboard boats, and hockey players and movie stars that come here to vacation, and there's a lot of that. But obviously, the way I experience it and the way I continue to value it is in its more natural resources, in the little crown land getaway spots, in the parks, and in the quiet tucked away lakes that you need to put your canoe on your head a few times to get to. And so there is still a lot of that around here, and it's really precious to me, and that's it continues to be sort of what I strive to be out in during my free time, whether it's on skis, snowshoes, or in a canoe.
I love it, man. Absolutely. I'm right there with you. And you mentioned that your job allows you to do a lot of that. What's the job?
So currently, I'm a store manager and buyer for Algonquin Outfitters. So it's the largest retailer and outfitter in the area that's been serving Algonquin Park since 1961. And there's a number of locations, inside Algonquin Park that Algonquin Outfitters operates, and a number of sort of more retail based locations in and around Muskoka that they operate. And my job is the retail manager and category buyer for the Huntsville location. Huntsville is the northernmost town in Muskoka, and it's about a 40-minute drive from the border of Algonquin Park.
Okay, awesome, man. Yeah, it sounds like at least you get to have your hands in the outdoor world kind of all the time, right? That's neat. It looks like you got a good fleet of boats over your shoulder there.
Yeah, so that's what happens when when you do the job I do and you make the connections that I have, and you're very diligent on Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace. Is all of a sudden you have a rack full of boats, and I try to use them as all of them as often as I can, but really I mostly use sort of like one or two.
I know what you
But
mean, man.
there's a lot of boats. There's a lot of boats for every occasion on that rack. That's for sure.
I believe it, man. I'm the same way. I'm a Facebook Marketplace canoe stalker.
Yeah,
I just text my buddy link. It's like 3 hours from where I am, but I was like, hey, you should get this boat or buy it for me and hold it, and I'll get it from you sometime later. I'm
yeah,
always like,
yeah.
whenever I'm scrolling and bored, I'm just looking at Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist for canoes, right?
Oh, totally. And even some of like the Facebook groups, like the Solo Canoe Facebook group and a couple other ones, they always like, a lot of people just throw up ads on there that they've found on Kijiji, but are maybe too far away from them. And man, down in the States, there's just some absolute gems of like solo canoes that pop up that I see that I'm like, man, if I could just bolt across the border for a couple days, could pick. And some of those brands are a lot, aren't common in Ontario, right? So it's cool to see like those Northwinds and boats like that, hornbacks and stuff that just gorgeous boats, man. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, it's I love finding that diamond in the rough because most of the time I'm not in the market for a canoe, but sometimes I am, but I got a little fleet myself. But most of the times it's just like, you're looking and it's like, yeah, it's either mislabeled or someone doesn't know what they have, or just somebody trying to pass it on to another paddler. I've had all three of those
yeah,
instances, and yeah, trying to
yeah.
find that diamond in the rough, it's fun, man.
Yeah, totally. I've had some really good luck with the collection I have back there, and I always at least try to be a little bit forthright. If someone's like offering up too good of a deal just because they don't know what they've got, I at least try to like give them a bit of a heads up. What I find too, though, is that maybe just luckily around here because the market's a little bit more upscale as far as the cottage community goes. But a lot of those canoes are just like, yeah, I don't care. I just want it gone. Whatever.
Totally.
And then there's some people that are like, I just need it to go to someone that's really going to use it, which is awesome, right? Because you're like, yes, I will use it. So
Yeah, man. I've
yeah,
had both of those as well. Yeah, it's yeah, it's fun, a fun little hobby. What is it about canoeing for you as opposed to motorboating or kayaking or backpacking or all these other different ways to get back into the woods? What is it canoeing? Is it just the area that you're at lends itself well to it, or is there something that you particular that pulls you to it?
well, yeah. I mean, without getting too hippie, I love being on the water. The water is a huge draw for me. I grew up, doing stuff in the water. My mom was a swim instructor, and the camp we would be at a lot of the time, of course, was right on the water. And yeah, this area absolutely lends itself to whatever you want to do on the water. Why canoeing over kayaking or a motorboat? Well, coming from a snowboard and skateboard background, I got really into wake skating and then wake surfing for a little while. But at least for wake surfing requires a bit of a pricier boat than even a very very nice canoe. So that's just not really in my ballpark, and also not something that like I would want to get into like constantly like servicing, insuring, gassing up, etc. etc. So I think where I landed with my love of canoes and canoeing is that it's very very simple. You put it on your head, you take it down to the water, you get in it, and it's simple and it's versatile, right? So unlike a kayak, it's easy to portage, it's easy to load and unload. It can carry a huge or a huge amount of gear or a very small amount of gear. And I just love the feeling of being on the water, right? To paraphrase Johnny Depp, a boat is freedom, right? So you can go left, you can go right, you can go in any direction you want for as long as you want, as long as you put your canoe on your head a couple times. Around here, the world is your oyster because there's lakes and waterways everywhere. And for me
Yeah.
to be here and not at least take advantage of that and enjoy that, I mean, it would be unconscionable to me. So, like a lot, like it's sort of funny because I meet a lot of people that like are going into Algonquin Park. They're like, "Yeah, I'm going backpacking. I'm really stoked," and I'm like, "Why?" So, and I get it. If backpacking's your thing, backpacking's your thing. But like, you're walking by these like beautiful lakes. You're literally like walking by these like gorgeous stretches of open water, carrying it all on your back instead of paddling it. So, yeah, for me, it's definitely canoeing, man. We have a couple kayaks too, and they have their time and place just for like a quick lazy paddle into town after work, or a lazy day on a small river. We've got some little like 10-foot plastic kayaks that are fun just to mess around in. But if I'm going to go out for a day, a trip, an overnight, whatever, it's always, always, always a canoe.
I hear you, man. Yeah, I'm the same way. I love it. Although recently I have gotten into paddle boarding, and I like paddle. There's pluses and minuses. So I did my first backcountry like camping paddleboarding trip. What, 2 or 3 weeks ago? 4 nights off the paddleboard. I had a couple buddies in a canoe as kind of like a support canoe, so I had some bags in the canoe. But I was stoked on it. It was fun. It was a good time. And the thing that I like about paddleboarding is, particularly for fishing, is the
Mm-hmm.
different perspective you get by standing up. It's like
Yeah.
I see so many more fish. I see the river so much better. So it is cool in that. But the negative is, among my other things, is you're pretty much always wet. Like
Right. Yeah.
I fell in like 3 or 4 times, and even when I wasn't falling in, like, if I sat down on the board, my butt was going to get wet. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a canoe.
No, no, it's got its pros and cons for sure. I've seen some guys do some like really cool bow fishing from paddle boards, which like makes total sense to me. Like you're standing right above everything, and the vantage point is awesome. And yeah, I think it definitely has its niche, but around here, especially when you're talking like the logistics of portaging and the amount of gear you need for a multi-day trip, paddleboard definitely has its drawbacks that way. Especially when you get a big headwind and basically your body is like a sail. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, definitely a cool little niche to explore in for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was fun. I was going into it a little more high than I was coming off of it after those 4 days. But no, it was awesome, and I was glad I did it.
Right on.
What how about canoeing trips? Like, what are some of the when you think about some of the trips you've gone on in the past, like what are some of the big trips or highlight trips that you look back on and think fondly of?
Well, here's a crazy thing. Due to my job and just some background, even before I was at my current job, I was also in another kind of retail job here in Muskoka, managing a couple surf shops, so places that sold like paddle boards, wake surfboards, wakeboards, all that. So it meant that during the summer months, basically you're tied to the store. That's it. So I've actually never done any like crazy long canoe trips during the summer. I've just haven't been able to. That's not the kind of time you're able to get off work around here in Muskoka for most sort of jobs that depend on seasonal visitors. It's just the reality of it.
Sure.
So I do a lot of like overnighters, two nighters, just because everything is close and easy. I can be, from my house to a back lake in max 40 minutes. So I love that. So I do that as often as possible. And then I have done some, 3, 4 nighters here and there, probably just because it's fresh in my memory. The most fun one I've done recently was with with some friends with Sean James, Jim Baird, and Ted Baird. We went north of Massey, Ontario, which is about 5 hours north of here, into some back lakes for some spring trout fishing, and it was amazing. Loved it. There was one real pain in the ass portage, but it was absolutely worth it just to get into this big back lake that we had all to ourselves. Lake trout were all biting. Like, it was like fish fries every day. Cool campsite. Yeah, it was super memorable. Everybody had a blast. Everybody was like, kind of laughing all the time at something, at each other, at whatever. And it was just like one of those really good sort of good vibes, good fishing, canoe trips. Yep.
That's the best, man. There's nothing better than
Yep.
that, especially when you're catching them too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The humor might have been a little different if the fish weren't biting, but like, we got in there late on the first day, didn't really get much, got up the next morning and made our way out of this one section of the lake. And as soon as we got out of the bigger section of the lake, it was like boom, 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 boom. Everyone was getting stuff, and like before you know it, it's big shore lunch at this sweet spot on this little peninsula. Fantastic view, and yeah, it was really memorable. I think another trip I've done was in these little back lakes above a big lake way north of here, where my partner's family has like a camp. So once you get a little further north, cottages or cabins are mostly called camps because they're primarily always used as fishing camps or hunting camps, right?
Sure.
So they're still just called camps. I think they're still called that in like northern Michigan and Minnesota and places like that. This lake that the camp is on, it's a big lake. It's water access only, off grid, awesome. Love it there. But then once you start poking around into the back lakes above it, it starts to get really cool because there's no marked portages. There's very little information about the lakes that are back there. And the one portage I found was actually like, I found it because it was hand drawn on a map that her grandfather had made.
Wow.
And I went exploring and I found this like old portage into this like back lake. And I went and camped up there by myself the first time, and then portaged my way out through another like 2 lakes that I didn't look very access. Like, you could tell people were not back there very frequently at all.
Oh,
And it was just
man.
like, it was totally the reason that I started exploring Crown land around here. It's just like the thrill of the unknown, especially to you.
Totally.
And like that, I can still remember that feeling of like at the end of this old portage trail, coming out to the view of this lake, and you're just like, whoa, where am I right now? And it, like, just that feeling of walking into the unknown and having this area all to yourself to explore for as long as you wanted. It's still I love thinking of that memory and that feeling it gave me, and I've been back into those lakes now and done a little bit more exploring last year with Pine Martin, who I don't know if you've met yet or have had
No, I'm not
contact with.
sure. Sounds like maybe I should though.
Yeah, fantastic. He now does a lot of outdoor skills instructing through Yours Outdoors in Halliburton. A friend of mine, I've learned so much from him. He's like one of the OG sort of Ontario how to camp on Crown land or how to find Crown land sort of YouTube guys.
Sure.
He just an absolute wealth of knowledge. And he went up there with me last year, and we got into this other lake on this other side where it was like a total bushwhack portage. Like, just had to like take a stab at it, found a crazy old trail, and then once again had this like absolutely pristine lake in the middle of nowhere, not even a name on the map, and camped there for the night, and then made our way out the next day. It was so cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the best when you especially when you're like doing the scouting and like looking at the maps and trying to figure out like, should I go here? Should I go there? Is it possible to go here? And then seeing the whole plan come together and like, playing it out and then like visualizing the place that was on the map and fighting through, bad portage trails and, bugs and conditions to try and find it. And then finally, like, coming full circle and getting there. It's just the best, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So fulfilling. And we weren't even really fishing. We just went like exploring and to have a good camp out. And like I just remember this, like the sunset and the sunrise that day. It was like this like crazy like blood red glow. It was just like super memorable spot and experience. And it's like totally one of those reminders where like, yeah, that sweaty crappy portage that shredded my legs and I got bug bitten over it. And like this is why. And it's like it's 100% worth it. It'll always be worth it, and that's why I'll continue to do it.
Totally, man. One of the things that I always tell myself, I just said it the other day. I'm never upset with myself for going for a paddle or for going for a hike or for like, getting up and going outside and doing something. It's like that first, like, do I really want to like get up, take canoe off the rack, strap the canoe down, load all the gear? It's like, do I really want to? And then every time I'm out there, I'm like, why did I even hesitate 1 second, And
Yeah.
I always have to remind myself that when I have those thoughts going.
Yeah, 100%. I've kind of worked towards a system where at least in the summer, like the back of my car is just full of like paddling crap. So I know that if I can, as long as I can throw my boat on my roof, I can go to where I want to go and I'll have what I need to get out at least for the day in the back of the car. So like paddles, PFDs, safety kits, straps, it's all just jammed back there and there's at least a couple of each item. So I can just throw the boat on and go. We're really fortunate where we live. Our house is like I have a little canoe cart with like little bike wheels on it,
Sure.
and I can cart my canoe down to the water here in I think I timed it was like 8 minutes. I walk down to the water here, so really fortunate to have the water that close and just be able to throw the canoe on the cart, load it up, get down there, be on the water in like 15 under 15 minutes. So I love
Yeah,
it.
that's amazing. Can't beat that. They say, I remember reading one time, they said that like people who live within like, a few miles radius, if they're within like walking distance of their work are, some percentage points happier in life. It's like the same thing, but with, with canoeing, walking
Yeah.
distance in
Yeah.
canoe, your life's going to be, you're going to be just fine.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's mentally, even just knowing that the water or like, the concept of getting away out onto the water and that freedom mentally of, just knowing that it's that close and that available to you. There's something to be said for the peace of mind that always sort of offers you as far as it being in the back of your head during a really stressful day or whatever, just even knowing that it's that close and that accessible, or even just a short trip away, that definitely, that has value to it. Right.
100%, 100%. How did you get connected with like Jim and Ted Baird and some of these other YouTubers and outdoor personalities? I know we've had Jim on the podcast, I think 2 years ago now. Of course, from the Alone show and all their own stuff and expeditions. But how'd you get tied up with some of those guys?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story. Sean, Sean James, like My Self Reliance, I actually met him.
YouTuber.
He started following me on Instagram like a long time ago before I had any idea who he was. And I just like saw him as this like YouTube guy. Like, and at that point in time, like YouTube was this like totally foreign concept to me as far as like outdoor media went. And it's just not something like at that point in time that I partook in. So I was like, yeah, whatever is this YouTube dude? Like, okay, sure. And then one day I actually met him in the stories and he was like, introduced himself and we got to chatting and I was like, oh yeah, you're that guy. And so of course I followed him back and we got to chatting and then we eventually got to paddling together a few times and we've sort of remained friends since and really good to have a guy with the knowledge he has as far as like social media and the YouTube world, and his passion for the outdoors. He's always ready to pass on advice and his perspective, and he's an extremely knowledgeable and competent outdoors person. And I love being out there with him. Great conversationalist once you get him going. And it just sort of unfolded like that, where we live close enough to each other and enjoyed the same things, where it just kind of worked out. Jim and Ted are a bit of a different story, where Alexis Outdoors, so Karina, she and I met over Instagram, and she invited me to this like cottage weekend that she and Ted had like organized for like this weird like pond hockey tournament at Ted and Jim's cottage.
Nice.
And I got the invite, and so we went out there, and it was like a 2.5, 3 hour drive from here. Get there in the dark to this landing, and then their cottage is like just it's water access only too, right? So it's like you got to get across the lake. So it's like January or whatever, and there just been like this weird thaw, and dude, it took us. They're like, oh yeah, it's just a couple kilometers across the ice. It was like knee deep slush across this lake, like in the dark. It was like Friday night, like super late. We were so tired. It was just this like absolutely brutal slog where everybody was just like, what are we doing here? Like, are we gonna die? Like what? And then so that was like, me and my partner Karina and her partner at the time, and then Ted and his wife Heather, and we're just like, oh, this is bad. And then like we kind of get out to like the middle of the lake, and we're taking this break, and then I hear this like vehicle, and Jim is like driving his like Toyota 4Runner out onto the lake, gets it like tries to catch up with us, gets it like fully stuck in the ice,
Oh,
leaves
geez.
leaves it. So he's like, okay, I guess we're walking. So he was actually like able to help like drag some of our stuff, because it was so bad. So we like roll into this cottage, sweet place. It's like 1 a.m, like so late, and it's freezing because it's like wood heat, right? So it's like it's like -12 like inside the cottage, and we're like
Oh, geez.
trying to get warm and start the fire, and like totally the kind of experience that you either like get along with everybody and start making real good friends, or like you're like, I'd never want to see these people ever again. So
Right.
it all worked out in the end, and like at the end of it, like the Sunday on the way out just turned out to be this like picture perfect like -5 degrees Celsius like winter day, sun in the sky. We like just flew across the lake. It was pretty funny. And then after that, what I didn't realize is that like Jim and his wife and kid at the time lived just north of here. And so he was like, oh yeah, I got to stop in Huntsville and upload my YouTube video because we don't get internet at our place. So it was kind of funny. He left ahead of us after that weekend, and then we were driving home, and we pulled on to like the main street of Huntsville, and there I see like Jim hunched over in Starbucks.
Oh,
Like
that's
hunched
funny.
over in the Huntsville Starbucks, like lit up by the one light like left on like late at night, middle of winter, like uploading his YouTube video. So I texted him after. I'm like, dude, don't use the Huntsville Starbucks. Like, just come to our house and upload what you need to. And so then he started coming over, and we got to chatting and made some plans here and there. And sure enough, we've been sort of hanging out here and there and doing trips when we can ever since. And
That's
he and
funny.
his wife, he and his wife Tori are good friends of ours, and they've got they're just north of here. So yeah, we hang out and do stuff when we can, and yeah, it's great.
That's funny, man. Yeah. It's always funny too, showing up to a place, like you said, how on the Sunday it was like clear and no problems, like showing up to a place at nighttime, it like throws your senses off, it seems it's like so much more like, feels so much more dangerous,
Oh,
showing up in the
totally.
middle of the night.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was awful because your spatial awareness changes too. So we're like, oh, we're like so far, but yeah, it was a pretty bad slog. And then of course on Sunday we're like, well, that wasn't far at all. But the slush never helps.
Yeah, and I remember two stories that makes me think of quickly. One One time when we were in college, we went out for a spring break trip to Yosemite National Park in California, and it was in Colorado. We were in Colorado at the time, known for mountains and snow, and we were thinking California, known for like beaches and sunny weather, and it had been a slow or like a short snow year, a weak snow year in Colorado that year. So this was sometime in March, and we're like, oh, so we'll go out to Yosemite, and we had this backpacking trip planned. We're like, if there's no snow in Colorado, of course there's no snow in California. And so we go out there only to find that it had been a huge snow in the Cascades or the whatever mountains they are there.
Yeah.
I think the Cascades. And yeah, our whole route that we had originally planned, like completely like 10 feet under snow. And we had to completely change route. And I was with
Oh,
one of my good buddies, and I remember it. We were breaking trail, like post holing through the snow with
oh,
backpacks on the way in, and it took us 3 days to get in because we were breaking trail, and then it took us
oh,
like 3/4 of a day or like a half a day to get out because we were just walking in the same in the same steps at we broke trail in on the way in, and just like such a slog to get in, and then out was just so quick.
yeah. It's it's crazy the way the weather can change and what it means for like human powered travel, right?
Yeah, so funny. The other thing I remember about that is we were wearing big backpacks and, like I said, not prepared for the snow, so we like didn't have snowshoes or anything.
Oh,
And my buddy's a shorter guy, and he would go in front of me, and I had to break trail most of the time because he would take like one step and then try and take another like big step, and he would both his feet would sink in the snow, and then he would just get like saddled and just
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
have like nowhere to go, and I have to come up behind him and like pick up his
Oh,
backpack and move steps. Yeah, that was a fun one.
yeah, that's a slog for sure.
What type of fishing you got going on up there? You mentioned lake trout. Are you a big fisherman from the canoe, or what? How do you fare there? Do you like to fish?
Dude, I like to fish. I am so bad at it. So I used to fish a lot as a kid, and so just in the last 2 years, I've sort of gotten back into it because a lot of my friends and a lot of guys I know on Instagram, I'm in these like weird little crazy back lakes, and they're like, "Man, why are you not fishing those lakes?" I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just in there to camp and relax and read a book and have a good time. So like, man, you got to start taking a fishing rod. So I was like, okay, I'll start taking a fishing rod, and of course, no real clue what I was doing. So luckily, I got some people like Sean and like Jim that are like, okay, here's the lures you take, here's what you do, blah blah blah, and some other people I know too that are a big help like that. So then I actually like started catching some fish. So
Imagine that.
which yeah, yeah, I know. So yeah, I get pretty stoked. I'm not over the top serious about it, but I take my rod now and I take my lure selection and I do what I've been told to do, and now and then I get some fish. So lately I've been into brook trout and lake trout, and luckily I've had some decent results this past spring with both. And then of course bass fishing starts up here soon, and I think Sean and I are going to try to get out after the July long weekend for a bit of bass fishing at this lake that we got to last
Awesome.
year. That was like a banger bass lake. So I think we're gonna try to go back there and do a little fishing. So bass is, bass for me is sort of like easier and fun. The trout thing is something that I'll probably be like still like figuring out and dialing in like 20 years from now, right? So I'm just going to do my best with that and sort of learn as I go, and hopefully get out more with the guys that know a lot more than me that I can continue to learn more from. But yeah, it's a lot of fun as I get more into it. The more I've been sort of enjoying it, aside from like losing lures and stuff. I am
Losing
wearing a
lures,
yeah, I
knots.
know. I am wearing a shirt with a lot of fish on it today, and like it's like sort of a joke because these are like probably all
Beautiful.
the all the fish that I'll never catch. So like right down to the actual number of them. but I'm at least trying a lot more than I used to, and I am enjoying it. And I thought maybe for a while they're like, oh, I'm just going to take a rod. I'm never going to use it. It's just going to tick me off and get tangled and snag and blah blah blah. But I'm figuring it out and enjoying it more and more. And yeah, the trout thing is just always so like intriguing to me, right? Because it's such like a there's such sort of like a storied history and technique of finding and fishing for lake trout and brook trout around here. That all the spots are very secretive. All the techniques are very like sort of everyone has their like own. They're like, oh no, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You got to do it this way.
Yeah,
And they're like,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
no. Yeah, you must wake up at 5:13 a.m. exactly, break a branch and point it southwards down at the shore. you know,
Yeah. Make a
drip
smoke
drip
signal.
one yeah drip one part of your coffee into the lake, and then you can start fishing for lake trout. So there's like it's sort of like this whole big rigmarole, and yeah, trout fishing for backcountry enthusiasts, trout fishing is a pretty big deal around here, and it's sort of super cool to just even start learning about all that.
Yeah, man, it's great. I love to fish. It's been yeah, been in my blood forever. But yeah, I absolutely love it. But it's been fun for me too. I got one buddy in particular, my buddy Bobby, who always been an outdoorsman and a big paddler, and we've done camping trips and stuff. Never really been much of an angler, but just kind of started to pick it up. And yeah, man, it's like you're saying, it's I love so much about it. But part of the fun is the challenge of trying to figure it out and trying to understand why the fish are where they are, what they're eating, their life cycles, yeah, the best strategies, what not to use when. There's so much that goes into it. It's like a never ending learning game that I love. Thinking back on like when I first started fly fishing in particular, because I don't even remember when I first started spin fishing, but like learning all the nuances of fly fishing, uh, and like looking back on it now, being like, oh, for instance, adding a dropper, like a second fly to your dry fly rig, a dry fly dropper is what you'd call it. It's like it's such a basic thing, but when I first like got that, it was like an exponential step in
Right.
like, oh, like breaking through the glass ceiling.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun to learn those things.
Absolutely. And there'll be, there's basically like a lifetime of stuff to learn there. Like there's just so much. So it'll be always one of those things where no matter how deep you want to delve into it or what you want to learn, it's always there to go to if all of a sudden you're really, really bored and have a lot of time on your hands,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
just need to commit
uh,
yourself like insanely to this mission of just catching all the fish ever. So I have some friends like that are like fishing tournaments every weekend. Here's what we do weeknights during the summer, and like this is the way, right? So that's their deal, right? Just like
right.
maybe taking photos and canoeing is my deal. Like fishing and nothing but fishing is their deal. And it's cool to see people that have like committed themselves to learning all that, because those are usually the people I see in my Instagram feed with like really big ass fish, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, exactly. How about gear? Do you consider yourself you work at a gear shop? So I assume you consider yourself a gearhead, but maybe not. I don't know. Where do you fall on that? And uh, yeah, I guess, do you consider yourself a gearhead?
I think I'm somewhere in the middle. There's like maybe some categories of camping gear where I can get a little nerdy, but I think overall for me, and this is what I find with most, we'll call them customers of camping stuff, most is that they're basically looking for something that will work well enough for what they want to use it for that doesn't cost them $1 billion, right?
Right.
And that's like most of your average. Like I go to I go on 2 to 3 camping trips a year, and this is what I need, right?
Right, right.
They're not looking for the
Arctic,
insanely light tent that they read about in a weird outside magazine online article. They're not looking for this like one strange headlamp that this one manufacturer makes that they read a review on Gear Junkie. They're looking for gear that works for them for the price they want to pay for it. So, again, for the job I have right now, I need to know enough to sell it to the average consumer. But there's people that walk in the store all the time that know way more about that stuff than I do. Like, the type of aluminum used in every pole and every tent, and what its strength is, and the density of the shock cord that holds the pulls together, and that's just not something my brain wants to make room for. So
probably good.
yeah, you know what, I and again, the reason I go camping isn't necessarily just to test gear and think about gear. It's to just enjoy myself and be outdoors and find some solitude and tranquility. So if the gear I find is if the gear I use is quality enough to work the way I want it and not be a worry for me, then it's done its job. Luckily, I'm still at the point in my life where I'm not looking for like lightweight everything because I have like a really bad back or something like that. I'm sure I'll get there eventually, but I'm not like a weight weenie. I'm not an ounce counter. If there's a piece of gear I really like, and it makes me happy when I'm out there, then I'm going to take it. All right. So
Yeah,
I
I'm the
just
same
need I
way.
just need good solid stuff that works the way I want it to, that I'm not going to have to worry about while I'm out there. So
Yep, I'm
yeah,
I'm the same exact way, and I'm maybe even a little more on the farther on the spectrum of. I think people are always surprised when they go camping with me of like, I don't want to say beater, but just like the generic or like, you know, cheaper stuff that it's like, you don't need all this crazy, super expensive, lightweight stuff. Like
yeah,
the basic stuff works great. It works just fine. It has function, and most of the bells and whistles you never even really use anyway. It's like you use the
yeah.
core of the thing, and it's like it's a good little selling point and a cool tactic, but you never really use it. With that being said, what are some of the your favorite pieces of gear in your typical canoe camping kit? Some of the
Uh,
things that excite you in your kit.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point you made earlier, though. Like, it's funny when I go with Jim and Ted, they just have like this like canoe barrel just full of like a jumble of like crap, and somehow it like all works and comes together, and they're able to cook food and be comfortable, and it's just like this like hodgepodge of like pots and just like plates and just like crap all in this barrel.
Yeah,
And obviously those guys know what they're doing, and I think more to the point, it's the skill set that goes along with needing the minimal amount of gear you use to match the skills you have in order to be comfortable when camping. And it doesn't really matter if it's a titanium plate versus a steel plate or a bowl or whatever, right? As long as it does the job you want it to, right? So
absolutely.
that being said, there's certain trips where all of a sudden, you know, weight does become a huge deal, and that obviously needs to be taken account for serious expeditions and trips like that. But you gotta think too, like it was only a few decades ago where people were tripping, like doing long expeditions with like canvas tents and cast iron pans and on
Totally.
and on and on, right? And somehow they made it all work, right? So
Yep.
yeah, but yeah, there's a couple things I love. I love my just like plain old zebra stainless steel billy pot. I use that a lot.
That's
Uh,
classic, medium sized pot, cooking pot.
Yep, with a lid and the bail handle is the crux there for me.
Sure.
It drives me nuts when there's no handle to hang a pot over the fire with. Like that's a deal breaker for me. So I love that. I've been using that a lot. Kid Products does like a cool, if I'm just going out for the day and don't want to shove a big stainless steel thing. Kid Products, their Canadian manufacturer, makes a nice light titanium pot. So I do have one of those. I'm not like I don't hate titanium or anything. So I do have one of those if I'm just chucking it in my day pack to like go into a boil, like a tea boil in the backwoods while I'm skiing or something like that. So I love pots and containers that you can actually just chuck right in the fire and boil stuff with. My sleep system is where I get a little picky. So I'm not a mummy bag guy. I cannot do a mummy bag. So it's got to be a
Okay.
sleeping bag that works for the way that I toss and turn at night and the way I
We
sleep.
have a
So
dissenter.
yeah, oh yeah. I get the reasoning behind mummy bag, right? It's efficient, and there's less draft, there's less air escaping, there's less material, right? But it makes me feel claustrophobic, and it just drives me bonkers. So unfortunately, my curse is that I'll always carry a heavier bag that is more comfortable for me, because I just can't do a mummy bag. So I've been into the Big Agnes Echo Park series lately. So I've got a -30
And
bag of that, and then a
and
-7
you like
bag.
it because it's square cut as opposed to tapered?
Oh, dude, it's like, yeah, it's night and day. It's like it to me, it feels like luxury. Like the liner is like a cotton blend, so it's not that like slippery nylon.
Right.
So feels fantastic. The Echo Park and the Diamond Park are sleep systems. So there's a slip under. There's sort of like a holder for your sleeping pad underneath the sleeping bag. So your sleeping pad actually fits into this sort of sleeve or this holder underneath the sleeping bag. So you can't roll off your sleeping pad, right?
Right.
And then it
That's
even
big.
has a slip for like an inflatable camp pillow, like up at your head. So then you're not like losing your pillow off to the side of your hood or whatever during the night. It zips down both sides like a full on comforter. Like you can just use it like a full on comforter. It's, I don't know.
That
It's
sounds
brilliant,
legit.
man. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. It's bulkier, it's heavier, but the trade off for me is a better night's sleep. And sometimes, well, for me, that's worth it. So yeah,
And that's why you got the canoe and you're not backpacking, right?
1000%. Yeah, yeah. So
Nice, man. I like it. I like it. Yeah, one time I got if you can believe it, I just upgraded, but I'm still using 0 degree mummy sleeping bag that I've had since 2010, I think. And of course, condensed in the stuff sack for every single day of that life. So you can only imagine the warmth retaining quality of that bad
yeah,
boy.
yeah. No kidding.
But it was funny actually. I went on a trip recently with my buddy who we got these when we were both like 17 at the same time. And he was like, dude, you still have that thing? He was like, I had to throw mine away like 3 years ago because it didn't keep me warm at all.
So
I was like,
bad. Yeah,
yeah, I usually get up in the middle of the night and add like a sweatshirt or jacket
yeah,
or something.
yeah.
But yeah, I finally upgraded to a Kelty bag. I actually got it for some of the guided trips I do, but I've been using it myself now too. And it's been
Nice.
nice. But I also upgraded to a when I'm going camping with my fiance, I have like a big, super thick plush two like queen size sleeping pad that I
Yeah,
blow up with like a little battery powered air pump.
yeah,
It's like, oh boy, you want to talk about living the high life out in the woods.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
that thing is literally like it's like a queen size mattress. It's amazing.
Oh, totally. It's same goes for my partner. She's willing to get out there, but it's got to be on her terms in terms of gear. So, and that goes back to another fact when you were talking about backpacking and canoeing, is that even with like a paddle out site, so somewhere where you're going to put in your canoe and paddle out to your campsite, allows sort of the average person the opportunity to backcountry camp, because you can bring the gear that you can afford, and for how often you're going to do it or the way you want to invest in your camping experience. And what that usually means is that for the average person, it's heavier gear, it's heavier, bulkier gear, right? Which is pretty cool, because it means that, like, it's still a fairly accessible activity. Whereas when you start to talk about like longer backpacking trips, like there's really no way around having to buy some crazy lightweight stuff, and usually it gets pretty dang pricey real
Yeah,
fast.
totally.
And
And then
that's just the reality of it. I mean, it's again, you can go back to the way people did it, you know, 20, 30 years ago, but it's tricky to be a long range backpacker these days and not spend a ton of money on gear. Whereas at
totally.
least
Or
if you rent a canoe, you can basically you can set yourself up decently at somewhere like Canadian Tire, which is sort of like, I don't know how you describe it
yeah, like
in the
I would
US,
describe it
sort
like
of
a
like,
farm and fleet.
yeah. You could set yourself up with enough halfway decent gear at Canadian Tire to get you through a few weekends a year canoe camping, because you just load the canoe up, right?
Totally.
And backpacking does not offer that same thing, right? So
Plus, then when you're canoeing, you don't have to deal with, like you said, a weight weenie, like trimming off the butt end of your toothbrush to shave 2 ounces. Like, oh my god,
yeah,
it makes me sick thinking about it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want to bring the cooler.
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah.
What I don't do many trips with many portages these days. I'll do a few, but mostly I'm a river guy, and most of the rivers I'm doing recently, just don't require portages. So, we're bringing the cooler loaded with cold ones, and all kinds of stuff. And recently, I did a trip, or I guess it was last summer, up in the Boundary Waters, where we did have some portages. And so I did two trips. 2 years ago, I did the first trip up to the Boundary Waters, and it reminded me. I was like, "Oh boy, I need to pack differently on trips where I'm portaging." And then the next year, which was last year, I packed better for those portages, but still it wasn't like the loose dry bags, which I've always done, can
Yeah.
be a pain, and just all the stuff. I'm curious because I remember as a kid, at some of the summer camps I go to, they had like the Duluth packs, like the classic canoe packs that you load all your stuff in. What's your packing system there? Because I know the dry bags, I don't think they had the dry bags back then when they were doing the Duluth bags.
So funnily enough, I actually own a Duluth bag, and I still use it.
There you go.
So it's just this like giant canvas beast of a bag. But there's just something about it that's so cool, like the green heavy canvas and the leather straps and silver buckles and stuff. So, yeah, I actually still use it. And then I have a really big dry bag with like a backpack harness on it. That it's pretty common here in Ontario. It was made by Eureka. Eureka's not making it anymore, unfortunately. It's 115 liters, so it's a bit of a beast. And basically, it's just like it's a black hole. Everything goes
Yeah,
in, you roll the
seriously.
top over 3 times, clip it, throw it on your back, and trudge your way through the portage, right? So yeah, most people I know will use a canoe pack, and then usually they'll have a barrel for their food supplies, right? So
Right.
in a perfect world, if you're tandem canoeing, someone has the canoe on their head with the paddle strapped inside or whatever, and then someone has a canoe pack on their back and maybe the barrel and a harness on the front, and away you go. And there's different combinations of doing that, whatever works for you. When you're solo, it's a little different. So again, because I don't pack crazy light, I'm usually a 2 trip portage guy, which makes everything a little longer. But yeah, it is the way it is, and so far I don't mind it. So it's usually one trip across with the packs or the canoe, and then second trip across with what you had to leave. I haven't quite been able to dial it into like the pack on my back, canoe on the head, and that's it. I think I've maybe done that once on just like a super quick overnighter, but yeah, not for any longer ones. Usually it's a double carry as it's called, so two
Yep,
trips.
I hear you. Well, Nate, we'll kind of wind her down here, man. But appreciate you taking the time to chat. It's been fun talking canoeing. What you got? Anything you're looking forward to this summer? Anything on the calendar? Any weekend trips? Any more fishing trips? Anything like that lined up?
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple kind of harder to get to crown land spots I've been eyeing up for a little while now that I'm going to work my way into, do some exploring for those one nighters and two nighters, and then yeah, hopefully a little bass fishing coming up with some camping with some good friends and just taking the summer for all it's got while it's here in the best way I can. You know.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, we're talking on the longest day of the year of
That's right.
2023. So still got a little bit of sunlight after we get done here, right?
Heck yeah! Last light at 9:47 Eastern Standard Time. Anyways, so yeah, gonna enjoy
Ooh,
it.
that's great, man. Well, hey, Nate, appreciate it again. Anything, any last thoughts or anything you want to leave us with?
No, I don't think so. If you want to check out my content, best way to do that is on Instagram at Nate Muskoka, or just search Nate Muskoka on YouTube. I've got a few videos up. I'm working on a bit more. And I think if you're listening to this and you've just been sort of humming and hawing about renting a canoe and getting out there, make this your summer to do it. And just like you alluded to earlier, you will not regret the effort to get out on the water under your own power. Just do it.
Amen. I think that's a great place to leave it.